number 14, Chelsea Robinson. Au deuxième rang, joueur deuxième but, numéro 21, batting second, playing second base, number 21, Ira Kurihara. Au troisième, receveur, numéro 20, batting third, catcher, number 20, Maddie Baker. Au quatrième rang, joueur au premier but, numéro 31, batting fourth, playing first base, number 31, Michaela Dele. En cinquième, notre joueur de gauche numéro 5, batting fifth, left fielder number 5, Alyssa Isle. En sixième, joueur troisième but numéro 6, batting sixth, playing third base, number 6, Carrie Pritchard. En septième, la joueuse désignée numéro 2, batting seventh, designated player number 2, Brooke Stewart. Au huitième rang, la voltigeur de droite, numéro 3, batting 8, right fielder number 3, Rhiannon Kent. Avant neuvième, la voltigeur de centre, numéro 33, batting 9, playing center field, number 33, Sarah Rio. En position flex, sur le numéro 19, in the flex position, pitching number 19, Millie Fitch. You substitute the alternates, numéro 7, number 7, Steph Brzezinski. Numéro 10, number 10, Ashley Harwood. Numéro 8, number 8, Peyton Laird. Numéro 2, number 2, Taylor Chillingsworth. Numéro 4, number 4, Aisling Wilson. Numéro 22, number 22, Neve Adams. Team Australia A. Voici les compléteurs pour ce match. Here's the whole team for this game. Team Canada. En première, joueur deuxième but, numéro 1, batting first, playing second base, number 1, Kelsey Harshman. Au deuxième rang, joueur troisième but, numéro 19, batting second, playing third base, number 19, Emma Ensminger. Au troisième, joueur de gauche, numéro 3, batting third, playing left field, number 3, Erica Polidori. Au quatrième rang, joueur premier but, numéro 13, batting fourth, playing first base, number 13, Zoe Hicks. Au cinquième, Nadeco, numéro 14, batting fifth, shortstop, number 14, Janet Ludden. Au sixième, voiture de droite, numéro 42, batting sixth, right fielder, number 42, Kiana Jones. Au septième, voiture de centre, numéro 5, batting seventh, center fielder, number 5, Callan Pilgrim. Au huitième rang, la joueuse désignée, numéro 15, batting 8, designated player, number 15, Nicole Rivet. En neuvième, receveur, numéro 2, batting 9, catcher, number 2, Natalie Whiteman. En position flex, sur le numéro 17, in the flex position, pitching number 17, Sarah Rohagan. We substitute the alternates, numéro 4, number 4, Sam Ryan. Numéro 7, number 7, Madeline McKinnon. Numéro 8, number 8, Morgan Reimer. Numéro 10, number 10, Ruby Anderson. Numéro 12, number 12, Kristen Boyd. Numéro 18, number 18, Don Goldrup. Numéro 22, number 22, Riley Brain. Numéro 28, number 28, Nicola Simpson. Numéro 77, number 77, Grace Messmer. Numéro 99, number 99, Morgan Rackle. Team Canada. Les officiels pour ce match, the umpires for this game, on out at home plate, Clinton Harvey. Au premier but, at first base, Jonas Kirstensen. Au deuxième but, at second base, Randy Homer. Au troisième but à third base, Nicolas Eugier. Mesdames et messieurs, les maintenant vous levez si vous en êtes capables. Retirez chapeaux et casquettes pour l'interprétation des hymnes nationaux de l'Australie et du Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise if you're able to remove your hats and caps for the national anthems of Australia and Canada. Have a great day.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to night number one of the 2023 Canada Cup Women's International Division at this great softball event. Japan already showing why they have been a world power. They have 2 wins to their credit, and Israel down Greece 4-0 in another contest as the host team, Team Canada, makes its 2023 debut under the guidance of Olympic bronze medalist in her second year as the head coach, Kaylee Rafter. And she will send Canada's ace to the mound, the former star at the University of Minnesota, Sarah Groenewegen, who did not participate on the national team last year. She played at times with Athletes Unlimited in that program, but absolutely Canada delighted to have one of their stars back, especially with a team very young in the circle. My name is Peter Loubardias, alongside former shortstop, the starter and veteran of the Italian national team, Amanda Fama. And Amanda, I know you have faced Sarah several times during the course of your career. It's a big difference for Canada to have her back, isn't it?
It's a huge difference. She brings so much, I think, to the game, not only in the circle, but from what I've heard from her teammates off the field, in the dugout as well. So it's a huge thing to have her back. I'm happy to see her starting here, and I think they're going to make a statement with this first game.
Canada, and in tough is Australia, and it's their development team, or B team if you will, because Australia's national team is just about to start their process and hope of playing in next year's Women's Softball World Cup. The World Baseball and Softball Confederation has gone to a new format where you play in the year previous a qualifying tournament. That is, if you're one of the last 18 from the qualifying going into that qualifying, and Australia is just about to start participating in their own tournament of 6 in hopes of being one of the final 8. This tournament here features 3 teams that will play in the final World Cup qualifying event, which will be held in an area that the fine woman beside me has spent a lot of time in. That is Italy. I want to ask you, what can you tell me about that ballpark and that area? And it will also hold the World Cup next summer.
Exactly. So the qualifying tournament, I guess you would say, and the World Cup are in the same location. Played there tons of times. We tend to train out there as well. It's a beautiful place, more of a countryside, but it's great. You know, it's a bigger, I guess, area. Since softball's not too known in Italy, it's a little larger area for the teams to play in and stuff, and it's great. So you can get kind of that experience, more of a higher level than something, you know, just playing down the street. But it's great, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Italy does with prep there, because it's really special to bring it back to Europe and to have it in Italy, of course.
Well, this is interesting. Canada started on the diamond, looked like they were going to be the home team for the game, and now apparently they're going to bat first. It has been an interesting day one logistically here at the Canada Cup, so we will have to wait for Canada to pitch and defend. We won't have to wait for them to hit, and they will face Millie Fidge, who gets the start. She was a participant in this tournament in 2022. She was part of this same Australian prospect team 1 year ago. Millie Fidge is from Adelaide and is coming off her, I don't even like this, freshman year. Doesn't really fit the gender, to be honest, but her first year must be nice. You're from Adelaide, and you played at the University of Hawaii this year, and she'll get the start. She was 0-2 in last year's Canada Cup tournament, pitched 5 1/3, gave up 9 runs and 15 hits. At the University of Hawaii for the Fighting Rainbows, pitched 39 1/3 in her first year. And Kelsey Harshman, one of Canada's top hitters for many years now. Kelsey is from nearby Delta, British Columbia, and I think her breakout party for Canada came right in this very ballpark at the Olympic qualifying tournament in 2019, and she is set to lead things off in our first of 2 games tonight, and Fidge misses down low for ball 1. Canada coming off a couple of exhibition games on the weekend, and they also, in preparation, played the Florida Vibe in Nashville of the Women's Pro Fast Pitch League and won every game in that tune-up but one. Harshman is 26 years of age. Her debut with Canada in any red and white Maple Leaf uniform came at the World Junior Championship in 2015. She was 5 for 13 and led Canada in hitting at last summer's World Games in Alabama. And Fidge having some trouble finding the strike zone as the youngster from Adelaide, Australia, delivers 3 straight balls to Kelsey Harshman, Canadian Olympic bronze medalist, as Canada reached the podium for the first time ever in women's softball in Japan a couple of summers ago. And the first strike from Millie Fidge. In 2019, I mentioned Kelsey as far as the qualifier. She didn't play for Canada in the Pan American Games and was left off that team in favor of pitcher Morgan Rackle. They opted then head coach Mark Smith for an extra pitcher. And she was Kelsey Jenkins then, Kelsey Harshman now. She made sure in that qualifier, Amanda, she was never to be left off another Canadian team, and she draws a leadoff walk.
And I think that's what's great is sometimes you do get left off to get another pitcher on staff, but she's worked her way back, and here she is.
And here she is now at second, courtesy of, I think, one of the best defensive third basemen in the world in Emma Ensminger. And Emma has a hit, and Canada has runners at first and second with nobody out. For 31-year-old veteran Brantford, Ontario's Erica Polidori. Another Olympic bronze medalist, as were the first two women in the Canadian order. Quite a turnover, though, for Canada. And the pitch gets away from the Australian catcher, Maddie Baker, and it allows the Canadian runners to move up 60 feet apiece. The big turnover for Canada since the summer of 21 in the Olympics, Amanda, as you well know, you played against this team as recently as last year's World Games, was their pitching staff. Massive turnover, and didn't even have tonight's starter, Groenwagen, when they participated in Birmingham, Alabama, and posted a record in that event of 2-3. Polidori. And ahead of the change from Millie Fidge. And can't help but think about the 2028 Olympics in terms of the possibility for it to come back again, and how a lot of countries right now in this event, Amanda, are building their teams.
Absolutely. That's what everyone's hoping for and looking towards the future. Building now.
Well, you're from California. That's where you reside. That's your home. And my understanding is one of the issues is to find a venue for that tournament. Yes.
That's interesting.
That's been the talk about what a concern is. Polidori on the ground. Harshman coming home, and she slides in safely. Just underneath the tag. And Canada with an early 1-0 lead as Polidori's ground ball to second, enough to cash in Kelsey Harshman.
Good aggressive base running there by Harshman. As soon as that was hit, she knew she was going.
So a run batted in for Polidori. And here's a newcomer into the Canadian lineup that I've been excited to see for the first time. Her name is Zoe Hicks. Got off to a great start. Had a couple of home runs in their first game against the Florida Vibe. A fake bunt, the throw down. That allows Polidori to scamper to second. And Emma Ensminger, who has a single and at third, stays right there. Chris Jones coaching at third base, a longtime Canadian men's national team. He was a great shortstop. And on the topic of great players, coaching at first base for Canada is Jennifer Selling. And Jennifer Selling batted .429 at the Olympics, led Canada. Wouldn't say, Amanda, I was surprised when she called it a day, but I'm not so sure she wasn't playing the best softball of her life 2 summers ago.
I think that's the thing. A lot of these older women, including myself, played at the Olympics and we're happy with calling it quits after that, especially with Jen, you know, winning a bronze medal. I can't imagine that feeling. There's no better way. She probably wanted to go out, and good for her.
A strikeout for the youngster Zoe Hicks as Millie Fidge records her first out. Brings to the plate Mississauga, Ontario's Janet Leung. Been a fixture of the Canadian program going back to the World Junior Championship in Brampton, Ontario in 2013. I'm not sure where the time goes. I was lucky enough to call a number of games all the way back in that event. And here she is, an Olympic bronze medalist 10 years later. And a fine fielding shortstop. Had an excellent college career at Brown University. And a little higher up in the order than we're accustomed to for Janet. Usually in the 8 or 9 hole in the Canadian lineup. Goes the other way on the ground. They're going to come home again, but this time Ensminger's cutting a rundown. And she is just tagged out. Ensminger from Victoria, who's an assistant coach now as well at Simon Fraser University, caught in a rundown and tagged out. And that's an important out for Australia, who lost their opening game, and the opening game of this 8-team women's event, 10-0, courtesy of Team Japan. So Leung, in the rundown, was able to make her way to second. So Canada still with runners at second and third, but now there are 2 out for Kiana Jones. Has a very promising future for Canada. Up the middle, and Fidge does an excellent job to get herself out of a jam. As Canada does score 1, but it could have been many more. We're through a half inning here in Surrey, and the host team leads Australia 1-0 on Softball Premier TV. A beautiful night for almost anything, the way it's turned out. It was a pretty chilly morning, cloudy, but the sun has arrived. It's warm, beautiful, slight breeze blowing, and a great crowd already on night number 1 of the Canada Cup, with the host country taking on Australia, and was able to push a run across in the top of the first. And as we started to introduce, Canada will go with 28-year-old Sarah Groenewegen. She's from right here in White Rock, British Columbia. A beautiful area just to the south of us. Making her return this year to the national team. Took a year off after the Olympics. By and large, did play some games in Athletes Unlimited. The one Canadian pitcher, and it does not happen very often, to beat the United States in a major competition. She did that in 2015 at the Pan Am Games through all 8 innings in a 4-2 gold medal win in Ajax, Ontario. in one of the great Canadian women's softball moments that wasn't the Olympics 2 summers ago. And she was spectacular in that game. They went to the international run rule in the 8th. Canada pushed across 4 in the top of the inning, and the Americans came back and scored 2, and Canada hang on for the win. And Groenewegen with an absolute gem in that one. And she's had many others. She was 1-0 in her 13 1/3 innings at the Olympic Games. Struck out 14, walked 6, and started the bronze medal game against Team Mexico. Facing Chelsea Robinson, comes inside with a strike and gets ahead of the Australian shortstop, number 14, Chelsea Robinson.
I'd like to see this Australia team be aggressive, which will be hard for them with them being so young, but with a pitcher like Sarah, what you just said about her, once she gets going, she gets on fire. She can pitch 8 innings, and she can make diving plays like that to show her athleticism. And so they're going to have to get on her quick.
Well, they get a bit of a break there, as the Canadians will probably want to talk about how that play was defended. As Sarah, you don't really want to see your pitcher diving for a ball. And had she understood how the ball spun, probably would have just let it go foul. But instead, it's going to be a base hit for Chelsea Robinson. And this Australian B team, development team, they're calling them the A team here, with the Aussie Spirit, that's the national team, getting ready for one of 3 World Cup qualifiers. Chelsea Robinson is from Adelaide. In the Under-23 Open National Championship in late December in Australia, she was 8 for 29, 4 runs batted in, and hit .276. And that brings to the plate the bunting Hira Kiraharu. Lays down a quality sacrifice bunt. And Kiraharu with a sacrifice bunt that moves Robinson into scoring position, as she's thrown out 5-4 at first. Amanda, why is it, whether it's softball or baseball, that if you're going to get to a star pitcher, it usually seems like it has to come early?
I think just later in the game, it's tougher. It's tougher to defend. Both sides are being aggressive, so if you want to get ahead, it's got to be early when no one's really set a tone or a rhythm yet.
And the pitcher hasn't gotten into a rhythm.
Right, once they get going, they can get going and be unstoppable, and we've seen that in the last couple of years, especially with Canada's pitching staff now that they have.
Groenewegen is back. Morgan Rackle still on the staff, and Canada very hopeful for youngsters like Ruby Anderson, who's only 17. A newcomer to the program is Morgan Reimer. She is just 16 years of age and a very highly recruited player for Division I schools already. And I wonder if we will see her this week. Canada going with a pretty large roster here, as Maddie Baker, a swing and a miss. And Sarah Groenewegen has her first strikeout of the game on the swing and the miss from Australian catcher Maddie Baker. And there are 2 away. Bringing to the plate, first base player, Michaela Denny. Robinson at second in scoring position, and that's a tough pitch to hit. In on the hands, just kind of under the hands on the inner part of the plate. I can't imagine a pitch being much more difficult to deal with for a right-handed batter than in that spot.
That's right, Peter. You got to get ahead of that early or it's going to jam you. It's going to hurt. Break a bat even. But those are the difficult pitches. That's where Sarah goes.
Michaela Denny is from Perth, Australia, attended Lakeland College in the United States, where she hit .364 with 7 home runs and 45 runs batted in. And would love nothing more to cash in Australia's first run of this Canada Cup. Shut out by Japan in a short game today, 10-0. Japan also got hot late in what was a really good 1-0 battle until the bottom of the fourth against one of the best teams here in Team Italy, but broke it open with a 3-run homer and ended it in the 6th, winning that game 8-0. So Japan, the preeminent favorite to win here in Vancouver, is Groenewegen upstairs on the high rise that Denny swings on and misses. So Canada, 2 Sarah Groenewegen strikeouts and lead Australia by a count of 1-0 after 1. You're watching the Canada Cup of Softball on Softball Premier TV. .26-year-old Callum Pilgrim from Abbotsford, British Columbia, a first-year head coach at Lindsey Wilson College in the United States, and the starting center fielder. Canada without Larissa Franklin. Don't even see her tonight on the lineup card, and that would be a massive loss for Canada. Certainly if she's not available in a couple of weeks when they head to Italy for the World Cup qualifier. Pilgrim off the end of her bat. Had a chat in Oshawa during their training session inside one day a couple of weeks ago, and head coach Kaylee Rafter talked about the progression of Callum Pilgrim, and with Victoria Hayward opting not to participate, which is a gigantic loss for Canada at the plate and in the outfield. She would be the starting center fielder or right fielder or left. Opens the door, Amanda, for newcomers like Callum Pilgrim, who is playing in her 2nd straight Canada Cup. Last year was coming off the bench. Had 1 hit in her 7 appearances. Came in a game against the Netherlands, one of Europe's top programs, as you well know. Pilgrim, that's a base hit. And she's going to make her way towards second, and will do so safely. Callum Pilgrim has a leadoff double, in Canada with a runner in scoring position. As she drills it, you saw the chalk fly down the left field line. It was just fair. And another newcomer to the Canadian national women's team is their designated player, Nicole Rivet. She's a 22-year-old from Oakville, Ontario. Played this past year in her 5th and final year of eligibility in college at Canisius University, where she hit .338 with 5 home runs and 29 runs batted in. Her first 4 years in the NCAA were at Bucknell, but then transferred. I can't wait to get your thoughts maybe later in this show or before the end of the week on the transfer portal, Amanda, and what that has done for the college game, obviously not the international game, but I'd still be curious. Change up from Fidge. Missing down and away. To number 15, Nicole Rivet. She did participate in the 2018 Canada Cup, but she did that for the Canadian Elite team, which is a lot like the team they're playing from Australia. The development team. Canada only has the one team in this tournament. And off the air, we chatted briefly, Amanda, about one of the great differences when you're Japan and the United States really is in the circle, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and it makes a huge difference because you can fluctuate those players, those pitchers in and out according to kind of what you have coming up. And, you know, if you're facing Japan for a gold medal, are you throwing, for example, those pitchers that they know and whatnot? And like you said, we discussed it, and some of these other countries don't have the pitching rosters like other teams do, and that plays a factor in it.
Well, and it's kind of changed the balance of power a little in the Americas in terms of so much of what Canada was able to do, and Mexico for that point, was getting ready for that Olympic experience and building your team. And, you know, Canada had a very strong pitching staff. You know, you face them overseas at the Olympic Games with Danielle Laurie and obviously Jenna Kyra, Groenwagen. Very different staff. Millie Fidge checks smartly. Pilgrim remains at first, and Rivet in her first at-bat of this Canada Cup and first as a national team member grounds out to the pitcher, Millie Fidge.
Catcher number 2, Natalie Weidman.
Natalie Weidman is a great story for Canada. She spent so many years behind the now head coach, Kaylee Rafter. Great teammate from all accounts. She has such a positive attitude, and as of last year became Canada's starting catcher as she pops out to shortstop Chelsea Robinson. But a great attitude, has been with the program for a long time, and now in a larger role as she pops up to the shortstop for out number 2 in the top of the second. And those are the great stories, too. People that have worked so hard and stay with it. And, Amanda, let's be frank. It's different for women. There's more to think about, and there's more to think about in any sport where you're not likely to make a lot of money. So, you know, at a certain point, and even for yourself, I'm going to guess, when do you move on? You know, how does it affect your profession? How does it affect your ability, if you so choose, to start a family?
Mm-hmm. It's a huge factor, and I think we're seeing that with a lot of these veteran athletes now retiring. It's almost like, what's next? Because you give up so much. You have athletes that sacrifice so much, and they play for years and years and years for really that chance at what now? Because the Olympics are gone. You know, they play for the passion of it, and does it hinder their future a little bit? Maybe.
Kelsey Harshman singled and scored Canada's run in the top of the first inning. And whether it's this great sport of fast pitch softball, or any kind of ball, I would label Kelsey Harshman as a professional hitter.
She's definitely one that you highlight on your notebook with a whole bunch of asterisks next to it.
She comes up in scouting meetings is what you're talking about?
A few times. She's a long conversation, a couple ways you want to play her. How do we play her this round? It's all strategy when it comes to her, which makes her a professional hitter.
Because she can hit it anywhere.
She can, and that's what's so hard to defend.
Good eye at the plate. Wasn't always in the leadoff spot. That used to belong to Victoria Hayward. And Harshman in that spot on a regular basis in the last couple of years, including tonight. Has a great eye at the plate, which I don't know if you could be what I would label a professional hitter without having a great eye at the plate, which she most certainly does.
I think the number one spot is a great spot for her. Hard to follow Hayward, but to be a leader on this team, the number one spot is the place to be, and you can really set the tone.
And just drills it. Gonna cash in a run. She's 2 for 2 with an RBI double. And the moose horns up on the helmet for Canada as Kelsey Harshman just absolutely flat out delivered on the conversation with her second hit and her first run batted in of this Canada Cup. As she launched it the other way off Millie Fidge to give Canada the lead. And Emma Ensminger at third base had 17 attempts at third in the Olympics and cashed in on every single one of them. The change up from Fidge. Ensminger with a hard line drive to left in the first, where Canada could have broken out but got caught in a rundown. She did, in fact. That kind of stemmed the tide for Canada. On the ground, and it'll go foul. Ensminger, she's 27 from Victoria. She was a star at San Jose State University in her college days. 2 for 11 last summer for Canada at the World Games. One hit against Italy, and was 11 for 11 in defensive chances in that event too. So her last two major events, she's 28 for 28.
She's doing well.
At the hot corner. And you would have incredible appreciation for anyone in the infield, and whether it's at second, short, or third. And I think she's one of the premier third base players in the world, defensively. Trying to score Canada's third run. Harshman popped in the air. Robinson has a play and makes it. Kelsey Harshman's RBI double has Canada in front in the second of the Australian development team by a count of 2-0 on night number 1 of the international competition at the Canada Cup. Australia trailing 2-0 in their second game. Elisa Mihail leads it off for Australia, playing in left field. Canada adding to its lead on Kelsey Harshman's RBI double in the top half of the inning as Sarah Groenewegen continues to work. I wonder, is this game, if head coach Kaylee Rafter will have a somewhat Team Israel approach that we saw earlier against Greece, use 3 different pitchers, did Nikki Palmer in their 4-0 win over Greece. Not sure how long Groenewegen will go, but she's a local. This is where it all started for her, right here. Played so many games. In fact, her dad, and I don't know if that's still the case, Amanda, but her dad, certainly in 2019, was the head of the grounds crew here.
How fun for her to have such a large tournament, an important tournament, to be here in her hometown and have her dad be part of the field crew and it just be a family event, which softball usually is.
And I can't call a game with Sarah, especially since it's been, for me now, 4 years, which is hard to believe since the qualifier. She takes the ground ball from Miguel and goes to first for out number 1. You played in the 2018 World Championships in Chiba, Japan. Well, that was the most terrifying time ever for Sarah. She came down with Legionnaire's disease just prior to that event in 2018, and it's not unfair to say we almost lost her.
Wow.
And so for her to come back, play in that Olympic qualifier the next year in this park, still gives me chills. And it was a very scary, beyond serious time for her.
And look at her now. Peter, you and I have spoke about kind of the backstories of these athletes. I know my own story, but a lot of this we just see on the field. Oh, hey, they hit, they pitch. But there's so much more to what these girls have going on and what they sacrifice.
And Sminger, her first attempt at an assist. And she makes the play to first to retire Callie Pritchard. Amanda, I don't know if we would ever have enough time on any broadcast to get to all the amazing stories, sacrifice, family, things that people have absolutely no idea about. But one of the reasons that I love this event so much, and as we talked about today in the car as we continue to get to know one another, this sport has really impacted my world growing up in Saskatoon, working with a high-level team that won a couple of Canadian senior women's championships, one in the late 70s and one in 1980. And I say it publicly all the time on a lot of forums. Being around those group of women in many ways laid the foundation for everything I've been able to do. That to me is one of the greatest teams I've ever been around. People, work ethic, commitment, and love, to be frank. Well, Canada loving how their night is starting. They're in front 2-0 as we go to the bottom of the second in Surrey. with a 2-0 lead in their opener, the host team at the Canada Cup of Women's Softball. They, along with Italy and Japan, have a huge World Cup qualifier. Top 2 teams in the 3 qualifying tournaments going on this month, one about to begin tomorrow in Fingal, Dublin, Ireland. There will be another in Valencia, Spain, and then can you help me with the names of the place in Italy?
I say Italy because that's my American part. I can't pronounce
The
location.
Castri, I don't know. I've seen it a million times.
Spot that they always want to have these tournaments.
Yes. Now, can you at least describe to me what would be the nearest major city for people who might be interested in, I don't know, maybe someone like me and going to the World Cup next summer?
I think the best location, maybe Venice, up towards that way, that direction a little bit.
Canada's leading things off with veteran Erica Polidori. Reached on a fielder's choice back in the first. And Millie Fidge continues to work in the circle in her second consecutive Canada Cup tournament for Australia. Polidori had an excellent 2022 Canada Cup, went 5 for 18 with a home run and 3 runs batted in, and it screwballs off the end of her bat. In your time, Amanda, I don't even like to say it that way, you could come back like tomorrow and suit up. I know it. How much has bat technology changed even in your time?
It has changed so much. It's so advanced that you were talking about how hard being an infielder is, even outfield, but the technology now, it's incredible. You can barely hit this ball, not even square it up, and it can potentially go over the fence. And it's really forcing pitchers to, challenge themselves and hit locations and spin the ball because of just the technology alone on the bat.
Changed so dramatically, like everything else technology-wise in the last 15 years, I would say. Zoe Hicks rips it to left field, and Hicks has her first Canada Cup base hit. The 25-year-old from Boissevain, Manitoba, who played her NCAA college softball at Louisiana Tech. And her first appearance with Canada's national women's team, and that'll be a hit that I'm guessing she would remember. Do you remember your first hit with Italy's national team?
I do, actually, yeah.
Not surprised, Janet Leung has many. And she lifts this one to left field in Canada with back-to-back base hits from Zoe Hicks, playing at first base, and the veteran shortstop, Janet Leung. So when, where, and who against?
Was 2018. First time playing, we were playing in Corona, Italy, so a little city in Milan, and we were playing against USSSA Pride. Actually, they were doing a tour out there. Jolene Henderson was pitching, who's always been a nemesis of mine. And I sat on a changeup, which I usually strike out on, and I ripped it to second base where Sierra Romero was playing, and she missed it. I mean, it was up the middle a little bit, so it was a hit. But I do remember it. It was very exciting. So
that's awesome. I love that.
These are definitely memories for these girls.
Kiana Jones playing in right field, grounded back to Millie Fidge, her first time up. Jones, relatively new to the Canadian women's stage, playing at the University of North Carolina. She is from right here in Surrey, that has produced so many of Canada's top women's softball players. Gets into this, over the head and off the wall. Canada's going to score a couple. Here comes Leung. 4-0 on a 2-run RBI triple by 21-year-old Kiana Jones. Not always easy to see that monitor for replays with his son, is there? She goes the other way and hit it hard. Almost got out of here. And Kiana, who was 6 for 19 with a couple of homers in last year's Canada Cup tournament, has her first 2 RBIs, an extra base hit. And Canada is going to force Nerida Wyrn, head coach of Australia, into a pitching change. 1 in the first, 1 in the second, and 2 more thanks to the Kiana Jones RBI triple. It was a bit of a down year for her at college. 2022, 7 homers, 28 runs batted in. College career actually started at Minnesota before she transferred to the University of North Carolina. Tough slugging this year for her, 192. But once again, in chatting about 10 or 12 days ago in Ontario with head coach Kaylee Rafter, said she was having a great camp. She had some hits against the Florida Vibe in their pre-tournament. And good to see her. She's become a very valuable piece and will continue to be moving forward. As I look over my shoulder to my left, and I'm pretty sure that's Danielle Laurie walking away from one of the food trucks. And the new pitcher for Team Australia is Millie Fidge. Will give way in the game. And is that Steph Trzynski? It is. Steph was a member of the Aussie Spirit national team at this tournament last summer. She is not part of that group, I'm going to guess, unfortunately for her, this time around. And making her second appearance of the tournament. She was the starter this morning in the tournament opening game against Japan. Gave up 6 hits, 5 runs, 4 of them were earned. As Japan has put up 18 runs in their first 2 games. 10-0 against Australia, 8-0 this afternoon. And Canada trying to join the win column. Top 4 teams have a large advantage at the end of the round robin. They will have 2 playoff lives rather than 1. So if you finish 5 through 8, you're playing to stay alive in every game. Get a little extra help if you grab one of the top 4 spots. And I would suggest you don't want to be in the 4 spot, because it means an opening night date likely, and shouldn't talk that way. You never know what can happen, but right now it's hard to look at Japan and not think that they aren't the cream of the crop. But they have yet to even hit their stride, and in fact, they haven't even thrown either one of their top 2 pitchers. So that's scary to think about. Is Callum Pilgrim having a good night? She has a double in the game. The 26-year-old from nearby Abbotsford, facing Stephanie Trzynski. And hit it hard, deep, gone! Callum Pilgrim, have a night. Had 1 hit in last year's Canada Cup, has 2. 2 extra base hits, including a home run. And Canada ups their lead to 6-0. And just got over the fence. Now the wind is certainly, Amanda, dying down from what we experienced earlier.
She hit that well. That was a for sure home run to help give Canada the lead. And good for her. And like you said, in this first game, she's got 2 hits, doubling her last appearance here in the Canada Cup. And that always plays a factor in athletes' mind. You know, how did I do the last time I was out here? A lot of people don't think that we think about that, but we do.
Oh, I'd be quite shocked when people tell the truth. And let's be honest, athletes are put in a position quite often where you don't really feel like you can over certain things. But absolutely, confidence, I don't care what you do, is everything. And if you come to a park and you've done well there before and against a pitcher or against a team and you're feeling good, I like your chances way better of getting a hit. So Canada makes an out on the long out to right by Nicole Rivet. She hit it well. And there are 2 down for Canada, a team that has scored 4 as the number 9 hitter, Natalie Weidman, squares. So here's a question. I see a number, not a ton, but a number of hitters will do this. Why do they like to start that way open?
With the bat out in front. More of a timing mechanism. Maybe they're not feeling the pitcher. Maybe the pitcher's really spinny and they just can't get the timing down. It helps them kind of shift their weight back and then explode forward to just have better timing. Some of them see the ball better, see the windup better, but everyone I've worked with or players I've played with or even myself, it's more of a timing mechanism.
Great to have Amanda with us, longtime shortstop with the Italian Olympic team. She's from California and was just playing in last year's World Games for Italy in Birmingham, Alabama. And just grateful to have her here providing insight. Always love to learn from people who know more than we do. A strikeout for Natalie Weidman and a strikeout for the new pitcher, Stephanie Trzynski. But Canada score 4 times, including a 2-run triple by Kiana Jones and a solo shot off the bat of Callum Pilgrim. It is 6-0 Canada after 2.5 in Surrey. Sarah Groenewegen and Team Canada working on a 6-0 lead. Groenewegen with 3 strikeouts in the game. She surrendered a hit, and it was an odd one. It was the leadoff batter, Chelsea Robinson, in the bottom of the first on a ball that was popped in the air. Looked like it might go foul, and a nice diving try by Sarah, but couldn't quite get to it. That's the only hit she's given up. As right fielder Rhiannon Kemp leads things off for this Australian development team. She was here. She's a 24-year-old from Brisbane, Australia. And an impressive first Canada Cup. Batted .278 with a couple of runs batted in. Had a double in a game against Canada. And would like to start the party for Australia in the bottom of the third on a beautiful night for world-class softball here in South Surrey, White Rock, British Columbia. Just love the setting. Every time I drive in, just makes you feel good. Always a good day at the Diamond. Groenewegen, the rise. The one thing I have noticed, and I think it gets to be more and more important, is pitchers' ability to change speeds. Sarah was really a power pitcher at the University of Minnesota, but now has a good changeup, and thank you, Sarah, for throwing it right as I was chatting about it. There's a 20 for you a little later. But how critical is that to just, with every passing year, adding more to your repertoire, different ways to get hitters that, on the international scene, you see them a lot at times, don't you?
You do, and you see them 7, 8, 9 times maybe, and the more ammo you have is better, and it's more their release point and how the hitter deceives the ball. If it's released the same and it's traveling in the same path, that's what fools you, because it could be coming in at 55, 60, or it can be coming in at 72. But it all looks the same, and that's what gets deceiving. And so the more you have, the more ammo, like I said, it's better for a pitcher.
Well, Sarah rolling along. Sarah Ryu in center field for Australia. And a strike delivered on the outer half by Groenewegen. And most pitchers have a little of everything in their arsenal when they're in that, what I would call, world-class category. And Sarah certainly is in that category. The ace of the Canadian staff. And if Canada is to finish second or better at their World Cup qualifying tournament and guarantee themselves one of 8 berths in next year's World Cup of softball, she will be a massive part of it. There is no doubt. She will get the ball a lot on a very young and pretty inexperienced Canadian pitching staff, with the exception of her, and Ryu goes down swinging, and Ryu goes down, and Sarah Groenewegen has her 4th strikeout with 2 outs in the bottom of the third. I've got to believe, Amanda, this will be her last inning of work. I think I saw Morgan Rackle up, and I do as I peek underneath one of the umbrellas. And the Calgarian is warming up. The second most experienced Canadian pitcher, who last year was really their number 1 on a very young, inexperienced staff. Chelsea Robinson, who has the only Australian hit, gobbled up and delivered by Janet Leung. 3 up, 3 down again for Groenewegen in Canada as they're in front 6-0 in their first of 7 round-robin games at the 2023 Canada Cup of Softball. I need a A great crowd has assembled on night number 1 of 7 of the 2023 Canada Cup. This community, rich in tradition in the sport. What better place to be? And if you're tuning in, we're very happy to have you with us on Premier Softball TV, the Canadian website, YouTube, and everywhere where you're watching, no matter where you are in our world, because I'm going to guess that with a world-class field, there'll be lots of different people from everywhere. And Australia is an amazing softball country. They're the reigning men's world fast-pitch softball champions. They won the title in arch-rival New Zealand last December. And Amanda, I don't know if you've watched 19-year-old Jack Besgrove pitch for Australia, but he is worth the price of admission and more.
I think I have, because Australia is a team that Italy was close with thanks to our head coach Enrico, and so we really kind of went through what they were going through with their men's team, and just, it's incredible. The young men that pitch that fast, honestly, like, they're great. They definitely dominate.
Jack Besgrove is the best young pitcher I have seen in about 20 years in the men's game. Already has a world championship, a U23 world championship. Just threw a no-hitter on the weekend in a big men's tournament as he's playing in North America on the club circuit for the first time. Reminds me of another Australian at the same age by the name of Adam Folkert, who made his big debut in a tournament I was lucky enough to call, the 2009 World Men's in Saskatoon, and he was 19. And now 14 years later, there's another 19-year-old. What I'd love to see in more countries, not named Canada and the United States, is the next 19-year-old sensation in the women's game. Because it changes the balance of power. And you don't need a staff with 12.
That's the thing, I think, with international play is experience helps, though. You can have an athlete that comes and dominates, but the experience, a lot of these older women that are playing, their experience is so beneficial in the game.
Well, Kelsey Harshman already with a double and a run batted in, and she's on base now for the third straight time in the game. Canada's leadoff hitter brings to the plate Emma Ensminger, who's 1 for 2. Singled in the first and then popped up to Chelsea Robinson at shortstop in the third. Still one more game to come today. Riley Crane, another newcomer to the Team Canada program. She will pinch run for Kelsey Harshman, who has more than done her job on night number 1. Riley Crane, dual citizen, spends the majority of her time in Tucson, Arizona, coming off her first year at the University of Wisconsin. In her final year of high school at Catalina Foothills High School, she batted .588 in Arizona, and playing for Canada for the first time in a big women's international competition. She's the pinch runner down at first. And mentioned it in some of our earlier telecasts. A lot of teams in many ways with an eye on today, but I think 2028 is a factor. Ooh, the runner looked like maybe Riley Crane was safe at second, called out as Emma Ensminger is going to reach base on the fielder's choice. as we get another look. Amanda, tell me what you thought.
Yeah, Peter, I think she made it. Good hustle, though, and that's one of those hard plays, but running hard from the get-go makes a difference, puts the pressure on the shortstop. So I think she was safe.
Chelsea Robinson nearly completed the double play. And in fact, she did. I thought the runner was safe at first, too. They're both out. And there's 2 down. Interesting.
We could have another protest like the Israel-Greece game.
No, thank you. Polidori.
Regardless, that was a great play.
It was. 6 unassisted to 3 for 2, and then the ground out. Canada going to the bottom of the 4th in their tournament opener as the home team leading 6-0. On a beautiful night in British Columbia, South Surrey, White Rock, and Canada starting their tournament as the host team in this 8-team international event. There were 12 1 year ago. I think 8, frankly, Amanda, is a great number. A little harder this year, though, just because of the dates with those 3 qualifiers going on in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I know one of the hopes of Greg Tim at some point is to get together with the fine people at the WBSC and maybe find a spot, you know, right in this window where things aren't playing against one another. And really maybe create an annual event where it is the creme de la creme that's here. I always think, and I don't know how you feel, I mean, there's a lot of great events, and you've played in all of them, frankly. And I know it's not about just doing it in one country, but I do think, you know, to have an event that's a yearly thing, you know, kind of make it women's international fast pitch version of the College Women's World Series.
Yeah.
You know, you got a great facility here, fabulous place to come and spend some time. The Vancouver area at this time of year is one of the best places in our whole country. And now, again, could it be in all kinds of different places? Sure, absolutely. But, you know, this tournament has been ongoing for more years now than I can ever remember. So it is already a staple. Mm-hmm. So now I think the next step, and forget about it being in Canada, that doesn't matter. What matters is growing your game. And a great change up again from Sarah Groenwagen to record her 5th strikeout of the game as Kurihiro goes down swinging. Kuriharu, it doesn't always come out of the mouth trap that easy. Maddie Baker is the batter, the Australian catcher.
Kind of going back to what you said, Peter, about this being something to kind of be comforting to athletes, especially the last couple of years. It's like, what softball tournaments are there going to be that we can play? And that's kind of hindered things. I know personally with Team Italy, we would play maybe one tournament before going to, the Olympics or the European Championship. And so to have something that could be continuous would be so big for the sport, something to look forward to.
Riley Crane stayed in the game and is at second and does a nice job handling her first ground ball of this Canada Cup.
There's that inside pitch you want to try and hit.
No, thank you. Michaela Denny over at first with 2 out. That's one of her best in the change-up department. I'm going to guess that facing Jenna Kara's change-up for Canada wasn't a lot of fun when she had it going.
Really no change-up off any pitcher is something you want to see, especially when you get them back-to-back and then you're kind of in the hole here, 0-2, what am I going to get? You start thinking too much.
It was funny when we watched Alice Nicolini of Italy today, who you have great knowledge of. I couldn't help but think about Jenna. Just because for Jenna, and even what I saw from Alice, Jenna's was world class, and she'd throw about 3 or 4 different kinds. So it wasn't just bring some power at you, right?
Right.
It was like, it's going to spin this way on one, it's going to dip on another, it might go up on another.
Right, and the strategy behind it, they have one that bounces like that, and you get the strikeout.
And that's the pitch that led to it, the changeup. No change in the score. Canada by 6 after 4 in Surrey. So I've really tried to steer it this way. Zoe Hicks in her first Canada Cup for Team Canada. She's from Manitoba, in the Canadian prairies. Boys and men.
I wonder if by the end of the week I'll be saying A.
Probably. I never think that we say it as much as other people think, but we probably do. And Zoe Hicks is safe. Some good English, French, or whatever language you prefer, allowed that ball to stay fair. And Zoe from Manitoba has her second hit of this Canada Cup. The last one was a launch of a line drive to left. This one, as you just saw on your screen, not so much.
Steph had to come a long way to get that ball to let it go and then take that, I don't know, hop, spin.
It almost spun back.
Yeah.
Looked like it might be going foul, but spun the right way if you're Canada. Janet Leung has a base hit tonight and swinging it well. I also happen to feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, you played in your first World Championship, 2018. What is the peak age, do you think, in this sport internationally in terms of combining athletic ability and experience? Or is there one? Is it different probably for everyone, in part depending on who you play for?
That's a good question, and I think I actually just did an interview about this, about how men peak earlier than women, and I think that's a huge, there you go, the middle. I think that's a huge factor kind of in international ball. I think with experience, the peak age would be late 20s. It kind of takes a while to understand this international play, and I think that's what a lot of fans and athletes hoping to play at this level don't really understand. It's a very different type of play than we see with the Women's College World Series and college ball.
Kiana Jones still playing college ball at the University of North Carolina. Trzynski to first, or make that third for one, as Hicks retired on the force out. So while we're on that topic, what do you think makes it different? What is so different about the women's international game, in your opinion, from, somebody who went through all of it, the college ranks, played all those international games?
I didn't get to play at the Women's College World Series at that type of level, but from what I've experienced, it's just the pressure, the type of play, it's faster, it's stronger. There's more, I don't want to say pride, because people are very prideful of the colleges they go to. I understand that very well, but here you're playing for a country. And a lot of these girls, especially these young Australian athletes that I've been able to talk to, this is all pride. Pride, and that's a lot to weigh on athletes. You're not letting down a couple people from your alma mater. You're letting down a country that's counting on you.
That's a fantastic assessment. And I apologize. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions on and off the air this week. But I just think doing these games, when you have someone like you as part of it, people don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I've watched my whole life. I love the game with all my heart. But I wasn't down there in an international game. I might have been the donkey pacing around watching my country around the diamond somewhere. But I love that analogy. I really do. It is. It's different.
Well, and I even had to learn that the hard way. I was raised in Southern California, which is pretty much a softball mecca of the world. So many great athletes are actually here right now, but just in general. And so I had to learn through a couple of years of what international ball was, and traveling to Europe and seeing how they do stuff. And so it's so different, but also so similar, but it's something that you have to experience. And we've seen great young athletes come out here and do well, but also they just have to have the experience. So I like being out here to be able to kind of share that it's softball is softball, but there's a lot to it when you have to step aside from your family for a couple months, to just pursue a dream, to represent a country at that.
Well, that's been one of the great draws for me about, I love the game, but it really is, I don't know if I love the phrase, but the way we look at sports now as fans, I think there's become even more attention on, where the stars are, where the money is, where the celebrity status is. And I guess with how I feel about things, I just find events like this and an opportunity to be involved with people playing for their country. You're not out here to stake your claim to a massive living. Mm-hmm. Those sacrifices, everybody gets their own reasons for why they do things. I'm not going to tell anybody why they should or shouldn't. I just think it's more pure what I think of when I think about pure sport. And that's why it's created the love affair that amateur sport always has for me. And, it's a great combo because, and you did it. I didn't do it. I can't even imagine. I know how proud I feel just calling games internationally. There's a base stolen. Because, yes, there is a game going on. With 2 out. Nice stolen base for Canada as they have runners at second and third with 2 out.
And I like that Canada's still putting the pressure on Australia. Even though they have a 6-run lead, they're still putting the pressure on.
Nicole Rivet hit a hard drive to right, but it was caught right near the track. She hits this one off the glove of new pitcher Caitlin Laird, and she's safe. And aggressive base running by Callum Pilgrim, who is having a night to remember. As Pilgrim has a double, a home run, and has just scored another run in the game, and Canada cashes in twice. And Amanda, what that says to me right there, isn't it about the habits you want to form regardless of what the situation is? You get into a big game this week, later in the week, every extra base, putting pressure on people defensively, I always think that's an area that, you can't put teams in those situations often enough.
Absolutely, especially when you're playing a team like Canada that's strong, that's going to take those extra bases, and that's where I think experience comes in a little bit. As a first baseman, you have to be expecting them to be going for that extra base, come off the bag, and not wait for the call. You got to be throwing home whether it's the third out or not. And sometimes when you play it safe, it doesn't work out for you.
Well, the slow roller off the bat of Rivet turned into not one, but both runners scored. The one from third, that was going to be pretty evident, but Pilgrim with wonderful hustle to realize that there was a situation there. And Canada, now in the bottom half of the inning, will have an opportunity to take advantage, as Japan did in the most previous game, of the 7-run rule in this tournament after 5. And you talk about learning experiences. When you're young teams like Greece, this Australian group, and others, it's not always the most fun, but it is how you learn, right? Absolutely.
And I think that's what these coaching staffs hope for these teams. They're realistic about who they're out here playing, but the only way to get better is to go through these hard times. And I mean, what better situation to be in than facing Italy, Mexico, Canada, and even Japan to learn from? Every opportunity is a learning opportunity, and if you're able to see that and learn from it, then that's what makes a great athlete.
The other part about nights, even like this one, so here we are. This place is virtually jammed tonight on opening night. It is a great crowd. Certainly, and I know that Greg Tim, the terrific chairman, had talked about, they had a great opening weekend. They have their dates back this year too, Amanda. They bumped them last year, because, again, of other qualifiers and different situations to try and have the best field here they possibly could. But this is an awesome opening night crowd. And as an athlete, your juices are going to be flowing a little extra for sure. So this, I don't care if you're the favorite or the visitor. This is not run-of-the-mill Monday night in July, wearing your country's colors and doing it in front of a big crowd. Grace Mesmer, product of Oregon State, is the pinch hitter for Natalie Weidman, as Caitlin Laird works for Australia. She is their third pitcher of record in the game. Millie Fidge started, replaced by the veteran Steph Trzynski, and now it is Caitlin Laird delivering for this Australian team. She's just 20 years of age, from Melbourne. There's a country that is most certainly on my bucket list. And I know you have been.
Melbourne?
Well, to Australia.
Australia, yeah.
Great people.
Incredible people. And the best story I have for that is, again, our head coach passed away in 2020 due to COVID, and I believe he had a great connection down with the Australians. And while we were in the Olympics and after our first game, Team Italy's first game against USA, the president of the Australia softball wrote an email to our federation just saying that he was really proud of us and that our coach would be proud of it. And I thought that was a really, really respectful thing to do. You know, we're competing against each other, but they still understand what our team's going through, and it was amazing.
And thanks for sharing. Riley Crane, her first at-bat. A dual citizen with ties to Toronto and certainly where she's grown up in Tucson, Arizona. Her first at-bat, she replaced Kelsey Harshman earlier in the game as a runner and then stayed in to play at second. Mesmer, the runner at first on the walk with 2 out and 2 runs in the top half of the 5th inning. And the pitch is high to Riley Crane, one of the Canadian youngsters. Just 19 years old. Might not even have turned. I'll have to double check that. Might not even have turned 19 yet. Could still be 18. Facing a 20-year-old in Caitlin Laird from Melbourne, Australia. I always think about how much fun it would be to play in an event like this, especially on nights like this with the park and great facility and beautiful weather. Crane has her first Canada Cup base hit as a member of the national women's team, and it's also a run batted in. Well, there's another one tonight for the memory books at the Crane House, who just completed her first year at the University of Wisconsin, where the player she replaced in the game, Kelsey Harshman, was a star in her time at Wisconsin. Graduated, played her final year, Harshman did, in the year 2018. And Canada has made it 9-0. Ansminger. Pritchard the play, and it's a good one. Canada with 3 more in the top of the 5th, and they'll have a chance to close it out in the bottom half of the inning on opening night of the 2023 Canada Cup Tournament at Softball City. Sarah Groenwagen will get an opportunity to close it out She has gone the whole way, Canada's #1 pitcher against this Australian development team. Given up just the one hit, and it was the first batter and an odd hit. If you're just tuning in, and we're so glad you are, no matter where you're looking in. Could be anywhere in North America. I'm hoping we have a very nice Canadian audience tonight. And around the world. Peter Loubardius, Amanda Fama with you. And still one more to come on day #1. There's another game going on right beside us, too, in the women's division. Try to keep you abreast of that. Groenewegen giving up the one hit and has 6 strikeouts to her credit. So when you've been off for a year, by and large, as she has, and you understand when you're Kaylee Rafter, maybe part of this tournament, and maybe even part of, Amanda, why she's going the distance tonight, my guess is, and I've thought about it thinking, well, maybe it would be an early night, but then as she stayed in the game, I put my coaching hat on, which I love to do, and think maybe she sees a lot of work this week, knowing the kind of work she's going to have to do in Italy.
Yeah, that's a great point. That could be it. She might want to work on stuff and get through it and get those reps in right now. Or maybe not waste another pitcher just for an inning or two. There's different routes that the staff could be taking, but no doubt we'll see her again, and she'll be getting ready for the next couple weeks.
Well, what a great tournament to do it in, and there's strikeout #7. And, yeah, the growth of the changeup for Sarah has been quite evident to me over the years. And doing it right at home. This is where it all began for the now 28-year-old. Punch to left and just foul off the bat of third base player Kari Pritchard, who nearly delivered Australia's second hit. She gets some nice encouragement for Nerida Weirn, who is the head coach and coaching at third. Pretty good swing on that one as Polidori settles under, and Canada 1 out away from ending this game early, up by 9. In case you're not that familiar with runs and rules, as Brooke Stewart is going to be a pinch hitter for Australia with 2 out in the bottom of the 5th, their last crack. If you are leading by 7 or more, and the other team has had a chance to bat 5 times, the game is over. And the changeup is how Brooke Stewart is started by Sarah Groenewegen. As this week moves on, I will be fascinated to watch Sarah against Italy. That's a big game upcoming on Wednesday, I believe. I know they'll face Japan in their final round robin game. That one is set for Friday. That'll be a interesting one. Who knows? Could be a battle for top spot come Friday night here. Obviously, I think Italy and TC Colorado will have something to say about that. And a fitting way for the product of White Rock to end it. Gets a big hug from Natalie Weidman. And Sarah Groenewegen throws a 5-inning, 1-hitter, 8 strikeouts, and I would think a very satisfying performance for Kaylee Rafter and the Canadian staff in a game where certainly they were highly favored and expected to win, as Japan was against this young Australian development team. So Canada wins it by a count of 9-0, and they will be busy. They'll have a couple of games tomorrow. We will have one more game tonight. At least I will. Poor Amanda, I've already put her through 2. I don't know if she wants to stay for a third or not. If she does, well, the door is as open as it can be. But for now, we'll say so long as Canada downs Australia 9-0 on night number 1 of the 2023 Canada Cup of Softball.
For the latest in softball innovation, the website where you can experience the best tournaments in the Americas. Live games, news, tournaments, and much, much more. The best quality live softball, on demand so you can watch when you want. Become a Premier member now, softballpremiertv.com.